Hello, everyone. We're gonna get started. I want to first welcome all of us, everyone, for joining us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Syunik-centered. I'm the External Vice President of UCLA's Armenian Student Association, and I have the great pleasure of introducing our amazing author, Chris, for coming and introducing his book and for us to learn more about him. I'm very, very excited to be hosting this event in collaboration with Promise Armenian Institute at UCLA. This is a very, very special event, and I'm so excited to have seen such a great turnout tonight. So thank you all for coming, taking the time out of your evenings to support Chris, to support us, especially our students. Thank you so much. I know it's the beginning of the quarter, so I'm so excited and happy to see our Armenian student population come to this event tonight. We originally had a guest come in that his name was Alex from the NAI initiative. He wanted to speak a little bit more about his initiative and organization and about upcoming events, but just for the purpose of time, I'll go ahead and leave that at the end. I want, of course, Chris to speak about his book and his story first. Just to give everyone a little introduction about Chris before we begin, just so you guys can all familiarize yourselves with him just as much as I familiarized myself with him in the very short time, a very valuable time that I've gotten to know him. And I don't want to take away any time from when he's going to talk about himself, but just for everyone to learn more about him. So Chris was born and raised in East Coast in Boston, Massachusetts, and he attended Watertown High School, which was a very surreal thing to learn because I visited Watertown when I was in 8th grade, so that was amazing to learn about. And he graduated from Harvard University with a degree in economics and government, and he was actually Harvard ASA, the Armenian Student Association's president when he was an undergrad, and he wrote an award-winning thesis about Armenian diaspora investment. So Chris has roots from among many places, Syunik, and his latest book that he's going to be talking about today, In the Shadow of Mount Khustup, that we're all here to learn about, is inspired by his journey when he visited Goris and Kapan in Syunik in 2023. And I want to let Chris talk more about the book, but the story is inspired by true events and people that Chris met during his journey, during his time visiting his roots, and he hopes to inspire not only Armenian diaspora, but individuals everywhere around the world about the southern region of Armenia and to increase tourism in Armenia. Chris has an Instagram page dedicated to promoting his book and working with him and learning more about him and seeing how passionate he is about his story and spreading his word and the Armenian story through his book has been nothing but a true pleasure. And I'm so honored to see all of you guys here again tonight to come and support him. So just a little rundown on how this will work. So Chris will be giving a presentation on his book and his story. And then towards the end, I'll open up the floor with Q&A. So everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask him. He's open to answering any and all questions. And then Chris brought some books for him to sign and give out to everyone. So please, at the end, we have pastries, we have refreshments. So feel free to mingle afterwards and go up to Chris and get a chance to get one of his books. And lastly, again, I want to thank the UCLA Promise Armenian Institute. Thank you, Hosnik. Thank you, Anne, for collaborating with us on this event and helping us promote it and make this possible. It wouldn't have been possible without you guys, and it wouldn't have been possible without everyone who attended here today. And thank you, Chris, for traveling all the way from Boston to come visit us. But yeah, so Chris, whenever you're ready, take it away. I want to thank you guys again one last time.
All right, thank you so much, Lucy, for that warm introduction, and thank you so much to the Promise Institute and the UCLA ASA. I used to be doing all this stuff when I was an undergrad studying, and it just is a huge honor to be able to, have this platform to share my story, and I'm very, very excited to do that tonight. So I'm going to share my presentation now. We also have some participants who are online joining us, so just for them to see as well. And thank you to everyone who is online. So, yeah, this looks good. So I'm originally from Boston, as Lucine said. I grew up in the community in Watertown, which is kind of like, I guess, the East Coast, Glendale, if you may, because all the Armenians are there. If you guys have seen the movie The Promise, for example, at the end of it, where do they go? They go to Watertown. So that is a very interesting community in that it's very different from the LA one. Most of the Armenian community is descendants of the Armenian genocide survivors. And I just basically was very fortunate to grow up in a place in the United States that had so many Armenian people, and I got to have that experience of growing up Armenian and still seeing some of that culture despite being in the US. As Lucy mentioned, I studied at Harvard University. I did my undergraduate there, and I was also very passionate about being Armenian and doing Armenian things. So for 2 years, I was president of the Armenian Student Association, and I also wrote my senior thesis about Armenian diaspora investment. And during that time, I was always very interested in doing anything and everything possible with the Armenian communities. And part of that included meeting other Armenians. So, as some of you might know, Harvard has a rivalry with Yale, and some of my friends are actually from LA. Were studying at Yale University, so I was very fortunate to be able to not only be a part of the Ivy League community and studying with Armenians in my school, but make some connections there. There are also a lot of very cool events, such as the Armenian Relief Society's Youth Connect, and I was able to also meet some faculty members and people who are involved in Armenian academics through that. So that was a very big honor for me to be a part of that community and lead it. But everything in my family kind of started very, very far away in a place called Gavart. So Gavart is a village in the region of Syunik, and my great grandfather, who is pictured here, Cristopher, is the person who I'm named after. A lot of times people tend to think that maybe my parents gave me like an easy name, an American name for people to pronounce correctly, but I'm actually named after Cristopher, and he is my paternal great grandfather. And does anybody recognize the man sitting in the middle? Say it louder. Yeah. So, if you can tell from this picture, they're wearing like lots of medals. So this was basically a collection of all of the kind of important men in the village, people who were either like serving in the war, getting medals from the government, in that case, Soviet Union government. And Christopher was considered a very important man in his community. He was very involved. His uncle and his parents were involved in fighting for the independence of Armenia during the 1920s, so against Azerbaijan when they were protecting Syunik. And that was something that my family has always been very proud of. And he even changed his name back in the day. So originally he was born as Mesrop. And then when I was at the Armenian National Archives, which I'll talk about a little bit, I discovered his name was changed to Christopher. So that's something we'll touch about before. But that's also an important part of my family history that kind of inspired some of this book. So for those of you who may not be too familiar with Armenia, I know it's maybe not the typical place where most people go. Syunik is the southernmost region, and I have ancestors going back from Goris and Kapan, which are Goris is closer to Tatev, and Kapan is close almost to the southern border where we have Iran. And I was visiting there for the first time in 2023 after the Artsakh war. I saw, unfortunately, I never got to go and see Artsakh, and I saw that, everything is very unstable. You never know what can happen. So I told myself, I want to go see there one time for my own eyes. What happens? What's going to happen? You never really know. And I visited, and I got to go first. The very first thing I did when I went there was to go see my great grandfather's grave. So his name was Cristopher Patvakanian. I'm Patvakanian. In our family, we had kind of a tradition of always changing the last name based off the grandfather. So that was a surprise for me. I was expecting to see my name and last name, but saw the name, which was still cool. And I also got to meet some of my cousins there. And our last name is pretty small. Most of the people who have Patvakanian last name are members of my family. Funny enough, as I've been doing these book talks, I met some folks in LA who have the same one, and we're trying to figure out are we related or not. So it's very much an interesting quest for identity. And then at the same time, I got to meet people who I knew definitely I was related to. And I want to speak a little bit more about these people in this picture. So on the very left and on the very right are both my second cousins, and they were veterans of the Artsakh War. And they both were very adamant about being positive and resilient, and they weren't saying negative things about Armenia after their experience fighting. They suffered a lot, but they were very positive and forward thinking. And I was just so incredibly impressed with how people can see so many tragedies and at the same time be so proud of their country and not want to move anywhere. For those of you who have never been to Kapan, for example, when you enter the city, you can see the Azerbaijan flag because there's no longer like a very big buffer zone. And you would think, kind of after seeing all that war and suffering, someone might be fed up with it and they don't want to be around that anymore. But they're very much the opposite, and they quite enjoy their homeland. And they say, no matter what happens, we're going to stay and fight, even if, it's till the very end. So, and actually, the cousin on the far right was also fighting in 2016. There were some skirmishes with the Azerbaijan, and he was participating in that war too during his regular military conscription. So, seeing their resilience was something incredible, and I was very, very proud to have members of them as my family. It was my first time visiting Armenia after the Artsakh War, and also my first time meeting some Artsakh veterans. So then I said, I have to go back. First time I went, it was only for a couple of weeks. I was there a month. And then I decided I was going to go see these villages for 1 or 2 days. I ended up staying until the very last day. I got on this very old bus and I went straight from the village to Yerevan to Boston. And I said, in 2024, I need to go back and I need to go and see everything in more detail, have some more time. So this is a picture of a church. Who can tell me, did the Soviet Union appreciate Armenian religious history? So do you guys think this church is still standing? Probably not. So unfortunately, it's not standing, but the records from the church are standing. And that was the Surkevork church that it was located in Kavart. And unfortunately, they destroyed it in order to make a mine. Syunik has a very heavy industry of mining. A lot of people go there to work, or they stay there and they work that. So unfortunately, that church got destroyed, but all the records do exist till this day. And on the left, I'm actually right there in the National Archives of Armenia. And I was very fortunate to see all of the records. They were called Mazyans, and they have kind of everything that you would think. The births are registered there, the baptisms, the marriages, and the deaths. So you come into life with the church and you come out with the church. And I was able to work more in the family tree and spend some more time actually just seeing, how over the years our family grew or got smaller, or how things changed. And that was kind of a historical lens. And at the same time, when I was in Kapan, I was trying to spend more and more time with the locals. And I actually climbed Mount Khustup, which is the big mountain that kind of surrounds the city. And it was a very incredible experience to see sunrise from there. I don't know if anybody's ever visited or gone, but you should all do it at least once in your lifetime because it's just breathtaking. In addition to going and seeing my family, I also said I want to contribute in some way. So I did some workshops at TUMO. For those of you who don't know, TUMO is a technology center in Armenia. They give free classes in computer science and arts and all types of creative fields. So I was lecturing data science, which is my main profession. And I was very fortunate to be teaching these very, very bright students. They have kind of a joke that they said the minds of the students are sharp like the mountains of Syunik. And I can confirm that. I was very, very impressed with them. Even I was teaching classes in English, which may not be the language that they have primary instruction in, and they don't have as many developed programs or as much, teaching and training in Syunik because it is a region and most of the effort is focused in the capital. They soaked up all that knowledge and it was super awesome to be able to teach them. And then we have the shadow of Mount Khustup. So this, just for reference again, is the actual mountain Khustup, and a view is from the paternal grandfather's house that we have still to this day in Syunik. And then on the left is the cover of my book. So when I came back from my first trip, I told myself, I want to write maybe some memoir, maybe something about my experience there, my impressions. And I started just writing something on my own. And then I told myself it would be so much more interesting and I could probably share it with the world if I wrote a fiction story. And obviously, I know there's a lot of sad stories you heard about the Artsakh War. And of course, that's very important. And we want to talk about all the difficulties people went through. But I said, maybe I can try to put a positive spin on it and try to add something else. So I said, why not make it a romance novel? So from there came the idea to make In the Shadow of Mount Khustup about an Artsakh War veteran who is originally from Kapan, but ends up living in Yerevan for various reasons. And in the story, he ends up returning back to his homeland to work in the mines. And once he's there, he meets his childhood first love, Sianush, who is unfortunately already engaged. So the story is basically about his difficulty trying to overcome trauma from the war, trying to figure out what to do in this complex love triangle, and of course, testing his faith and seeing, how are you going to uphold your values depending on how you behave. So I'm a data scientist, couldn't have a presentation without some AI. This picture is a picture of my main character, I generated a couple of images based on some prompts and descriptions I had in the book of the people in the story. So I thought that would also be interesting, just to highlight some of their personalities. And yeah, so we have Khachik Lazaryan, who's our main character. Maybe he's a little bit inspired by me, Christopher Patvakanian. I don't know. But he's the main character. He returns from Yerevan to Syunik, and he basically is the one who takes us through all of the cultural heritage and experience of, living in an Armenian village, being a part of this community, but also being someone who suffered quite a great deal of trauma in the war, and he is the main person we follow. Second, we have his cousin Gevorg, and all the characters are kind of inspired by people I know, like my cousins or my family. So Gevorg is the older brother figure. He's the local in the village, who is Gevorg's cousin, and he stays in their home. And maybe he's the one who's supposed to guide him and teach him lessons. In that aspect, he's the older brother, but at the same time, they're also trying to figure out, how's Hachi going to maybe show him and teach him some things too from his way of life. And then we have Haso. So I think every Armenian family has kind of like this aunt, Morkud, who is in everybody's business, cooking all the food, inspecting everything, getting in all of the secrets and knowledge of the family. So Haso is kind of the mother figure. Khachik is away from home, but he's staying with his aunt in their house in the village. And she's definitely someone who I think kind of represents the more traditional side and is the one making sure everybody's behaving correctly, or at least watching. Then we have the beautiful Seyranush. So like her name, she's a sweet girl, and she's very beautiful, and she's stunning, and is Khachik's one that got away. So when he returns back to Syunik, unfortunately, she's already engaged, but he cannot resist her, and maybe she cannot resist him. So throughout the novel, they're trying to figure out how they're going to deal with this complex situation. And then we have one of my favorite characters, Arevik. So like her name, Little Sun, she is a very bright, expressive person, and she's the one who helps take care of Khachik. She's a nurse, and her experience surviving all the blockade in Artsakh is also highlighted throughout the story, and I thought that was also an important story to tell. There are actually a lot of people who live in Kapan that were from Artsakh just because some of the dialect and the food and the scenery is kind of like what they have. But at the same time, there are many people who, when they came from Artsakh, they didn't want to live anywhere near the border, and they were very kind of traumatized from that experience. So I thought she was very emblematic of maybe some people who I'd met there. And then finally, we have Arshak Tigranovich. So just based on this picture, what do you guys think? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? So he's a little bit of both. He's a good and a bad guy. So this is Khachik's boss at the mine, and he's the one who helps get Khachik a job. He ends up being a very important character in that he's kind of guarding over, giving him employment, but at the same time, always looking out for the mine's main interests. And I think he's also kind of representative of some of the people I met there. The big aspect of why Syunik is so vibrant is that they have a lot of work, and the work is at the mines. Unfortunately, that sometimes comes at the expense of human lives. People often suffer, and that's also part of some of the book. I talk about how people go through that difficulty when they have to be in that career. So writing the book. So when I wrote the book, nobody in my family really knew what I was doing. They knew I always liked to write. I used to write for a newspaper, and then I also used to write for my own creative purposes, but I never published anything. And I was kind of writing it in secret. I wrote maybe like a chapter every single night. I was very excited. I love to do it. I feel like it's kind of one of those things where it doesn't feel like work. When you really like what you do, it just flows from you. So I wrote the book maybe in like a month, couple days here and there. And then the actual going back, editing it, giving it to some folks to read, seeing what they thought, took about a year. And then I actually had reached out to some people to edit my book. Unfortunately, like circumstances changed it, and they weren't able to go and finish it. So I edited myself. So if you see any typos, it's my fault. And I decided that I wanted to publish the book in Armenia first because, I don't know, I wanted to take it there. I wanted it to be for our people. Of course, the diasporas and English-speaking Armenians is a little bit, I would say, more targeted of the demographic I thought should be reading it. But I was able to publish it in Armenia, and I printed it there. And I took it, the very first place was to Syunik. So I went, we had a really interesting thing happen where they had a book festival happening in Kapan. Unfortunately, I was not invited to go, but I went with my father, and the both of us being kind of stubborn Sunnites, we said we're going to go and we're going to talk about our book anyway. So through social media, through reaching out to people in the community, I was able to share my story there. And the locals were thrilled. They were so excited and proud to see, you know, a book with their mountain on it in their city. And some people, they didn't even know English. They said, "We're gonna buy it for our grandkids. They're gonna grow up. We're gonna tell them to learn English to read this book." And it was incredibly honored and humbled. I did not think anybody would be like remotely interested. I said, "I'll take some. If they like it, they like it. If they don't, then they don't." So it was very successful in Syunik, and I think that community connection helped them, and it made them feel incredibly proud. And they were saying like, "May many got seen, our American came." So I also thought it was kind of fun to be a little bit of a local celebrity when I was always just imagining I'm gonna go there and see my grandpa's village and get out. So I feel like, yeah, I was just going from being myself to trying to follow in the steps of my great grandpa. So Cristopher Patvakanian. And this picture is actually taken in Jermuk, which is not in Syunik, but it's a place where many people go. They have like a lot of resorts, natural water springs there. And he, having worked in the mine for his whole life, was going there frequently. And my dad and I were able to make a stop there. And I was like, we have to take a picture in the same spot. So it was very interesting to not only go back and write that book, but also maybe try to be a person like him and someone helpful for the community. I had also the great fortune to be invited by the American University of Armenia to speak about my book. And I thought that was, you know, an incredible opportunity. I got to go meet a lot of students there who had maybe nothing to do with Syunik or Kopan, but just for their pure interest in like reading something that is about Armenian English. A lot of people were interested. So I got to speak with them as well, which was very, very cool. And then I feel like the next step now that I've been doing all these presentations is like, well, we have the book, people like it or they don't like it. So far, knock on wood, it's been very successful. I would say I didn't imagine anything by my metrics. Like I had to reprint 3 times, so I was very happy about that. And I hope one day that maybe I can make this into a screenplay and hopefully a film. And the goal of this book is not for me like to make money. Like I'm bringing books, I'm signing them, I'm selling them on Amazon also. But I feel like more important for me, what's most important for me is that people learn about Syunik. People go, people see it, and then you know maybe they see it, they want to go back. Maybe they go back, they want to invest, they want to teach, they want to build, and we can tell our story. As I'm sure all of you know, we see a lot of nonsense in the news about, you know, who Syunik belongs to, what should happen there. And I hope that this story is part of a way for me to show some of the local culture and the resilience and the people who live there and make sure that, you know, they are the ones telling their story and we are the ones sharing our heritage and not the other way around. So, as Lucy mentioned, I'm also like pretty active on social media. I never had an Instagram account until I wrote this book, but now I'm doing it all day. So that's a very interesting way for me to be able to engage with the community. And if you guys are interested in following, you know, where this book goes, there's definitely going to be a book 2. So you can follow this and see what's going to happen. And I also want to say we have, first of all, thank you. And we have one more speech, a word from Nai. So Alex, if you want to come up. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. And as everyone said, this is my first time actually hearing Chris's presentation. We have a branch at GCC, and Chris had gave the presentation a couple of days ago, but fortunately I wasn't able to hear it. Now hearing it, just amazing hearing your story, and you know, everything is really incredible. I can't wait to read the book, and I'll let you know what I think. But I just came to share a little bit about an event we're hosting for NAI. So NAI stands for the Network of Armenian Young Innovators. It's a platform connecting ambitious Armenians from all around the world. We have a branch at Glendale Community College. We have a branch in Yerevan. We have over 70 volunteers all around the world. We have volunteers in Italy, in New York, everything like that. And what we try to do is we try to provide opportunities to young Armenians. So we host a lot of in-person events where we bring on different speakers. We've had the Chivichan brothers. We've had a lot of people in AI and things like that. And we bring on speakers. We also moderated panels. And after that, we host this activity called speed networking, where we provide young Armenians the opportunity to share their thoughts, share their, you know, maybe business ideas, share what they want to do with their life. And it's a great way to connect with other ambitious Armenians. On top of that, we noticed that there was a gap to be filled within the Armenian community for job opportunities and employment. So that's why we're coordinating the first ever Armenian Opportunity Expo in LA. It's going to be next Saturday, January 24th. Here's the flyer. It's also on the NAI Instagram. And basically, we're working with a lot of different businesses and things like that to try to provide job opportunities, internships, mentorship, volunteering opportunities, and everything like that. And that's a little bit about NAI. If you guys are interested, you can scan the QR code. You can check out our Instagram, NAYI.initiative. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Alex. Jen, and yeah, as you mentioned, the GCC NAI branch organized my first book talk in LA, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. So yeah, if you have any young people that you know, or if you guys yourself are interested, definitely take part in this. I wish I had this when I was in college. But yeah, and I also want to right now just open the floor to some questions because I know definitely one person has read the book and has many questions. So if you have anything you want to ask about, go for it. Yeah.
So, hi, my name is Lilia. I've been literally beaming the entire time you've been talking because I think Syunik representation is so important. I'm Gori Setsi myself. I was born in Goris. I moved here at a very young age. I have Gori Setsi ancestors on both sides as far back as I can, trace my ancestry. So, I know it's just a very special feeling to, hear about Kalpan and hear about Goris and just hear about the region in general. I know you mentioned you visited Goris. What were some of your favorite things about either like the region or the people, or what did you do? What did you see?
Yeah, so I'm gonna just briefly summarize the question in case folks online can't hear. Asking about what are some of the favorite things that I had from visiting Syunik, specifically Goris and Kapan. So that's awesome that you're also from Goris. Very excited to hear that. I don't meet too many Goris cities in the US, so that's very cool. So my grandmother's side is from there, and they have some family descendants, like very, very distant now. I think maybe like fifth or sixth cousins, but they also have a family tree. So when I went there, it was very cool to see the Khanzoresk bridge. So they have a bridge that I think is one of the longest in the world, kind of freestanding, that goes between two gorges. So it was very beautiful to see that. I went to Daltev, the big church monastery complex that we have, which is incredible. And there's a huge aerial tramway as well. I think also one of the biggest ones in the world. So that was incredible to see. And also just the food. The food everywhere in Syunik is my favorite food. I never knew anything about it, and now I'm very obsessed with it. In the book, you'll see I talk so much about food, and that was even some of the feedback I got. They said, you need to tone it down. Like, you get it. They're good foods. So I would say those are probably obviously like the sights and scenes, but the most important thing was the people. Everybody's very warm and welcoming. The hospitality in Syunik is incredible. I think there's something special about it. People being maybe a little isolated from the city life. They preserve that warmness. I was maybe like nobody to them. I'm so far away. Like if you were to do a DNA test or look at blood, like probably in the single digits, if anything. But just the welcoming, our brother, Mirach Bida, came all the way from America to see us. Like, how can we not accept him? How can we not want to show him around and, give him a good experience? So I would say that people is my favorite thing. Yes.
It's a great book. Thank you so much for making it. And my mom actually is from Syunik, from Kapan and Kajaran, and many of my relatives are living there and working at the mine. So the story is very much with me. I was curious, one of my favorite parts, and not spoiling anything, hopefully, but the way how you included Armenian words and then used the transcript of it was so refreshing and interesting. And Syunik dialect is pretty different from the Armenian language that is commonly spoken. I'm curious, what's your primary language in Armenian, and how was the Syunik dialect to you? How the whole exposure to it?
That's a great question. So yeah, the Syunik dialect is very difficult. I don't know, probably very few people have heard it. I would say it's maybe most similar to the dialect of Artsakh. I didn't know any of the Syunik dialect. When I was a kid, I remember sometimes my grandpa was speaking very quickly to us, and I would just go sit at his house and for 20 minutes and like nod my head and leave. And I'm like, I don't know what language he's speaking. And it was the exact same thing when I went back to Syunik this past time. The first time rather, I'd say in 2023, I was like, oh my God, this is way over my head. The way there's the words they use, some of the verbs, like the endings, the order. And that was just incredibly difficult. But I love learning languages. When I was in high school, like I studied Italian, I learned Spanish and Russian in college. At home, we speak Armenian and I know English. So I said, if I can learn all of these languages, I can do something with this dialect too. So I was like carefully listening to my cousins, even sometimes like listening to like things in the news, recording whatever like documentaries, things that I could find. Because sometimes there are interesting programs about Syunik. And eventually, what I did was I kind of made my own little dictionary of this unique dialect, and that's something that I put throughout the book. So I would have, I tried not to put so much Armenian as much as I put dialect, because I think eventually, when this book gets translated into Armenian, people are not going to be so interested in seeing Armenian dialect, but they'll be interested in seeing the actual like Syunik Kapan one. So I wrote, for those of you who haven't read it, I've written the Syunik dialect on the left, and then with a comma, like immediately whatever it is in English. And I did it in the transliterated version so that people who can't necessarily read Armenian are still able to learn about it. I don't know, it was very difficult. It just takes a lot of time. Also, sometimes I still mess things up and they think it's funny, but that's how you learn. So that was basically how that came to be. Yeah, go for it.
What's your favorite food was there in Greece and almost?
Jingalov
What's the
100, 1000. Jingalov was so good. I don't know if anybody has ever had it. I think the best Jingalov probably they say used to be in Artsakh, but maybe a close second is going to be Syunik. So it's kind of like a flatbread with different Armenian greens in it, but the greens that you eat and you find are only available in like very rural places. Sometimes they make it in Yerevan. You'll see people, they have like restaurants, and then, you know, even like on the street here and there. But the real authentic one is the Jingalov that Hassel makes on the old-fashioned wood-fired stove, and all the village greens that she herself gathers and chops up and cleans. And that is just the most delicious food ever. I don't know how to say it. When you're sitting by the fire and you're eating it, it's just to die for. Yes.
Can you comment on the day you actually did the hike and your experience? Because like you, 2 years ago, I did the hike also, and we woke up at like 2 in the morning to make sure we got there at sunset, and it was an incredible drive. And to call it a road is a big stretch.
Yeah.
Because it was the most bouncy non-road that I've ever experienced for about 4 hours.
So I've gone 2 times. The first time I went with my cousins, and we did that same kind of driving experience. So you have to, you can either drive up basically most of the mountain, and then when you get to the peak, there's no other way. So you have to get off and go on foot. It's incredibly, I would say, like dangerous to go up the peak when you're at the very top, because there isn't much infrastructure built. There's no place to hold on. It's all kind of natural rock. So you have to be very careful. Like, wouldn't recommend going with little kids, but if you are going, you need to be extremely cautious, especially because most people go to see the sunrise and it's still not fully light. So that was the first time we just drove up with a car, which wasn't too bad. And then the second time I gone, which was this past summer, I went with actually a very good friend, and we like camped outside at night, and it was very cool that there happened to be like a big group, and they were teaching Armenian dances. So we were dancing like traditional Armenian dances. I believe it was called Tarichk group, and that's kind of part of their experience. But we were just there with our friends, so we happened to kind of just hop along with them. So we had danced like all night, and they were making this thing called blech, which is like very thick Armenian potatoes sliced like horizontally on like a wood-fired stove, and it was just so delicious. And we slept until like 1, 2 a.m. and we got up and we were just running up this mountain. It feels sometimes like you're going up a straight incline, but we were all like very excited to go. So it was kind of mix of torture and fun. I had never done like any big hike before. This was like my first very big hike, and I was very inspired to do it again. A lot of people love it. There was also a very interesting singer. His name was Harait Maleti, and he was playing his guitar and singing a song. He had just written a song about Khustup, and it was like, I don't know, it was just perfect. So it was a very fun experience. I recommend it to everyone who goes to Armenia. If you can visit Syunik, try to visit Mount Khustup, in addition to seeing all the beautiful like churches and things like that. It's just a surreal thing to see the sunrise from here.
They don't plan to do the church, put the church on top of.
They have some interesting artifacts at the top, actually. They have a big cross on the very top of Mount Khustup, and there's also a kind of like a memorial grave for Garik Nishdeh, so his ashes are buried there. And if anybody is like interested in seeing that, I think the ashes are kind of in 3 places. One is at a church, one is at the foot of Mount Khustup in Kapan. They have like a memorial complex, and then the third one is there. And I believe those were like kind of his dying wishes, if I'm not mistaken.
It's better not to build anything there. It's beautiful as is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, I think in Abu Dhabi, they build Jesus.
No,
Picture
nothing more needs to be
They
built.
think they're gonna get.
I don't think it's even realistic to build something up there, you know, it's very
Oh,
difficult.
man, they're gonna get close
Yeah.
to him, I guess. To
Leave
be,
it as it. It's very beautiful.
I guess. You're right, you're right.
So, yeah, and I want to say again, thank you so much. Is there any other questions, by the way? Yeah, go for it, Lucy.
You mentioned that your next goal was to make this into a screenplay or a film. I was just curious to know, what steps are you taking? If you're even thinking of it, if not, what steps do you think you're gonna take? What inspired you to like write this book, spread it to everyone? Now you want to make a film. What are your goals with that? I just wanted to learn more about that.
Yeah, of course. So the very most immediate next step is getting this book translated into Armenian. So I speak Armenian pretty well, but unfortunately I never went to any Armenian school and I'm not very good at reading and writing. So I have someone who's translating the book for me. Hopefully it'll be done by the end of March. And then from there, once the Armenian version is out, I think kind of the way it works in the industry is typically you approach producers who have maybe some kind of aligned interest, and you also find, you know, some work that they've done that's similar to what you want to do, and you present it to them. And if they're interested, they may approach me to say like, all right, we want to make this into a movie. And I would have to either write the screenplay or find someone to write it, or they would have to find someone to write it if I auction off the rights to the book. As far as wanting to do that, I really want to make the film in Armenia. But if I do that, I don't know if it will be produced in English or Armenian. So I definitely, I would love to write it. Maybe if I write it in English, I'll be able to pitch it to them with that, and maybe it'll be produced in English language, or they'll translate it into Armenian. So that's kind of the next steps. I want to get the Armenian version out there, and then hopefully, I've never written a screenplay. I've never written a book either. So hopefully I'll be able to pull it off if I can. And that would be probably the next step, just getting it done.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we have no further questions, thank you again to the UCLA ASA and also to the Armenian Promise Institute here. I think, you know, this is such an incredible place for me to be, a huge honor. This is like an amazing platform. I've always heard so much about you guys, so I'm incredibly humbled you would take time out of your evenings to come here and listen to me talk about my story. Again, if you're interested, you can follow on social media. If you'd like to purchase the book, I have some with me. As I said, it's not about making money. I want to get people to just learn about this region, to go to see it, to be involved, because it's so beautiful, and it's our story, and it's up to us to share it with the world. Thank you.
Please, everyone, help yourself some refreshments. We have some pastries. Chris has his book, and I'm sure he'll be happy to talk about it more. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. It's such a pleasure. And thank you guys for helping us. Thank you. Hi. Where can I get your book?
Woke up in the morning.